Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Daily BALM. This is the 12 Principles Interview Program, and I'm your host for this evening, Beverly Buncher. This week, we're looking at Principle 9. It's important to explore and or heal your relationship with spirituality. You know, if you look through the Principle 9 interviews, you'll notice that they have a wide range. We have talked to people who are New Age. We've talked to people who are devout Christians. We've talked to people who are devout Jews. We've talked to people who are Buddhists. And we're always looking for people with different spiritual viewpoints to share with our families. So if you or someone you know would like to come on and talk about something that could inform our families, please let me know. Tonight, I feel privileged to invite Joseph LoBrutto. And Joseph is a very well-known person, but I don't know him because he's well-known. I know him because he's my neighbor. One day, we were all in the pool, hanging out, having a good time, and somebody else in the pool said, "Oh, it's Joseph LoBrutto." And Alan and I looked at each other like, "Joseph Lo who?" And we started to talk to him and Jen about why he was so famous. And I was pretty floored because he was talking about a topic near and dear to my heart, that of soul plans. And if you want to know more about my experience with that, please read the article I wrote in the newsletter. The thing about soul plans is it's something that can really change everything in our heads when we understand this concept. And whether you see it as God's plan or a beyond the ego plan of some other sort, doesn't matter what you call it, it's an interesting phenomenon. And especially for those of us who have struggled with loved ones who struggle, it can really help us on the loving path. So without further ado, I want to welcome Joseph LoBrutto, who is our esteemed guest. Let me tell you a little bit about Joseph. Have you ever had a feeling as though someone was in the room with you, even though you knew all the doors were locked and you were alone? It happens to Joseph LoBrutto all the time. Joseph was born in Long Island, New York, and raised in South Florida to a family of generations of psychics, mediums, trance channels, and spiritual healers on his mom's side. He himself is an ordained Alliance of Divine Love minister, a spiritual life coach, spiritual healer, and a teacher of intuitive development. In addition, he's a certified psychic medium, an evidential medium, and a published author. He calls himself a spiritual healing medium, and we'll find out more about that as we go. Joseph has written a number of books, including his memoir, Is There More to Life Than What We Know?, and Speaking to Heaven, which describes the after-death experience in detail and includes many testimonials drawn from his years of connecting people with their loved ones on the other side. Recently, he has begun to appear as a frequent guest on radio and television shows. And here's something that I didn't find out until I did my own research, that Joseph is regarded as one of the top psychic mediums in the country. And being an evidential medium is a very special designation. Joseph, could you talk about that? Because one of the big complaints people have when they go to a psychic is, oh, they asked me so many questions. Anybody could figure it out. What's an evidential medium, and how does that distinguish you from others?
When I use the word evidential, it is just to prove evidence that life exists after we pass. And how this works is I will bring things through that is personal, nothing that you can Google or anything. Special memories, conversations you had with the person who passed away. Maybe I'll describe a piece of jewelry that that person gave to you, a nickname that they called you, things that are just very personal. A lot of times I would say word for word right before that person passed away, what they would say to that person, and they'll repeat it word for word what they said before they passed. That's what's an evidential medium. It's not generic like your grandmother's here, she blows you a kiss and she loves you. That's
Mhm.
generic, okay?
Mhm.
Evidential is your grandmother's here, she died a certain way, she called you this certain name, she's talking about this certain ring she gave you, and she describes it to you, and that is an evidential medium.
Uh-huh. So when you're sitting with someone, do you ask them a lot of questions
Oh,
before you start to look?
I don't ask one question. If it's one-on-one, either through Zoom or in my office in Boca Raton, I use what I call a direct dial. I have this unique ability most mediums don't. It's like a universal phone book to heaven. So I just need the relationship. Mom, dad, brother, sister, son, daughter. That's all. So I may have somebody come in. I would like to speak to my husband. All I need. I'll have their husband telling me their name and their special memories and everything. I just need the relationship of the person. And if I'm just doing a generic reading, like in an audience, in a big audience setting like that, where it's not direct dial, then I'm kind of drawn to a person. I'll look at somebody and says, I have a male here. He tells me he's your husband. Did your husband pass away? I'll get the validation. Yes, he did pass away. And then I'll get the message what I need to say to him.
Hmm. Wow, that's so interesting. So did you see that movie with Matt Damon where he was a psychic medium and he didn't want to be one? He was like running from it.
Exactly.
What's
Yeah.
that all about?
There's a fear about it. When I first started, when I opened up to this, I was very young. I was a child. Spirits used to come. They used to play with me, talk with me. I remember laughing a lot. And I remember to this day, my father yelling at me. We had a two-story house and I'm talking to these spirits thinking that they're people my father let into the house. And he's yelling, go to sleep. Who are you talking to? And when my grandmother passed away, I was about age 9 at the time, 9 or 10, and went to her funeral. First time I went to a funeral, I remember my father taking me to her casket, saw her laid out, saw her going to the ground and everything. And my dad was explaining death to me, that this is the last time we'll see grandma, and to say our goodbyes. So I said my goodbyes. She went to the ground. But days later, as I was going into my bedroom, there she was, just like how I see you, sitting on my bed, smiling at me. Now I realized I was seeing a ghost because I recognized her. And then I
Uh-huh.
realized all these other beings that used to talk to me are ghosts.
Huh.
So long story short, I remember screaming, running out of the bedroom, but I can hear her voice say, Joey, I didn't have a chance to say goodbye and I love you. But all those words always would resonate with me to this day. And so that's when I realized, but at that time I realized I was speaking to deceased loved ones, or ghosts, I would call it at that time. And I shut down completely. Didn't want to have it. So my school years, all the way through high school and everything like that, didn't have this gift. A lot of people, when I go to my high school reunion, I didn't know you were a psychic or a medium. I didn't know either. This gift was shut down. It was years later, in my late 20s, my cousin, his name was Joe LoBrutto. It's an Italian thing, and name everybody after your grandfather. But my cousin Joey passed away. He's 34 years of age, had a heart attack,
Yeah.
left behind a wife and 2 children, 2 years and like a 2-month-old, and went to his funeral. And as I was driving home, I was angry. I was angry with God. Like, how can someone this young, a father of 2 young children and a wife, pass away? And I was very angry. And as I was sitting at a red light, I heard his voice clear as day. As I looked to the passenger side, there he was sitting next to me. If I was driving, I would have hit a row of cars right then and there. I thought it was my imagination. I thought this was part of the grieving process because he was there a split second and stuff like that. Few days later, I was watching television, and all of a sudden he appeared again next to me on my couch, and he says, Joe, or they call me Little Joey. Little Joey, you need to talk to Mary Lou and give her a message from me.
Wow.
So when I went to Mary Lou, I gave her something very personal that she would only know with her and her husband, that no one else would know. And my cousin Joey opened up heaven's gates for me. I was in my late 20s, like 28, 29. started seeing spirits come with me, coming in and out. I would go to the grocery store, I would see spirit and all that. So I had to learn how to shut this off so I'm not off 24/7. And so it's like that movie with Matt Damon, where he sees spirits all the time. I had to learn to, hey, I'm closed for business and I'm open. So I came up with this system. I was watching the movie Beetlejuice, out of all things, and
Yeah, I
you
love
know,
that. Beetlejuice.
exactly. So if I'm doing a large gallery with a bunch of people, maybe hundreds of people there in a group, I'll have everybody count simultaneously 1 to 10 out loud as you can. And once you get to 10, say your first name 3 times. So imagine a room full of 100, 200 people, all counting 1 to 10 to the top of their lungs. And then at the end,
Wow.
saying their first name. And normally the first name that's last I hear, that's the one I go to. I hear that name and I'll be drawn to that and I'll go to that person. And that's my on switch. And when I'm finished for the day, thank you very much for coming out to see me tonight. And boop, I'm off, closed for business.
So like when you're at the pool with all of us, you're not.
Yeah, nope, I don't hear nothing. I'm your average Joe then.
Yeah, you seem like an everyday guy.
Yeah, that's right. No, but like I said, you had no idea what I did until
No idea. Shocked.
until somebody said that. Because I did a big show when I first moved into the community here, and and that's where they remembered me seeing me at the show that I did at our community. So
that's so funny. Well, I'm really glad that we came across each other, and it was just so interesting because, and some people have heard the story, it was before, everyone who's on here will understand this. It was before Principal 8, and I was sure we didn't have a speaker for Principal 8. So I said, why don't you come on this week? I don't have a speaker. And then I thought, well, you'd be much better for Principal 9, but I have somebody for Principal 9. And I called Robin, who's not on here, but she helps me with booking. And she said, no, Principal 9 is open. And Principal 9 is explore and or heal your relationship with spirituality. So I do feel that there was kind of a connection there. And I'm really grateful that it worked out that you could come on tonight.
That's what I do. There's a lot of hype about psychic mediums on TV because that's what they televise and stuff. But when I call myself a spiritual healing medium, it's deeper than that. I go into the spirituality of everything. I go into the healing process. For those of us who lost someone, like for suicide and things, I explain what the spirit goes through after they pass away and how to heal the spirit on the other side and how to heal ourselves here. So that's where I go into consultation and I'll teach. And like you said, I'm also an ordained minister and a life coach. So I had got licensed and all that. So I'm able to offer that guidance as well, because I'm just to get the license for it so I can do that.
Right. Well, since you've opened that topic, we are a group of families, of persons who have struggled. And some of us have indeed lost relatives to overdose, to cirrhosis, to suicide. And perhaps you could talk a little bit about people who pass due to addiction or suicide. I don't know if there's a big distinction there. And what have you learned about that? And what is it like for the soul afterwards?
Well, it's really not a big difference in them, because those who are suffering with addictions, they're not happy, and they use the addiction to cover and to bring them to a different place. Those who commit suicide are not happy. They don't want to be here as well. What happens is, let's just say for those who have addictions and things like that, are suffering and overdosed. A lot of times what happens is when the soul passes, our lives do flash in front of us. And we do see what happens, and we see the repercussions of how we affect the persons. Like if we lost a child, for instance, and the parents are left heartbroken, and that child in spirit will see how it affected the parents. As a medium, I'm able to bridge the gap. I call it that loving bridge to heaven, where I can bring the child from spirit to the parent, have conversations where there's a better understanding and forgiveness, and even the suicides too as well. One thing I believe, there's a misrepresentation about all suicides go to hell. I don't believe in that. They are surrounded by love. They're get by healing love where they're at. Again, their lives flash in front of them. They see the repercussions of how they affect the persons that they left behind. And as a medium, I'm able to bring their thoughts to the person, an apology or why they did this. And just so, and a lot of times to share a story, I remember doing, it was a big group with a husband and wife, and their son their son overdosed. And the father did everything to help the son. At that point, I didn't know. I said, I have a young man here, and he says he loves you. The one thing he has to say, Dad, I'm sorry that I failed you. I said, you did everything in your power to help me, and I messed up, and I'm sorry. He started to cry, and then I looked at him and says, did he pass away of an overdose? And he validated. So the son talked to his mother and talked to the father through me. I have this ability to, I'm also what's called a mental medium, where at times the spirit will merge with me and will talk through me to the
So
the
you're
people.
channeling the spirit.
Exactly. And so the son comes through. I got this on video, in fact, because I'm always recording my big events, and talk to the father and mother. And what happens is, here on earth, it's a healing, knowing that the father realized he did everything he could to help the son, and the son's just thanking the father, so the father can go on with his life knowing that his son is okay. And I also teach that heaven is not far away, it's a breath away. And just because they're not here and we can't see them, they're always with us. And you just have to talk right here in your heart. They'll always hear you in your heart. So keep talking to them.
And you're talking about anybody who's passed, right?
Well, anybody who's passed, yes. They're always near. What triggers a memory, what signs are, anything that triggers a memory of a loved one, friend, or family is a sign. So if you're driving down 95 and a truck goes by with your father's name on it, for instance, and it triggers, oh, that's Dad's name, and you start thinking about your dad in spirit, that's a sign. So those are the signs to look for. They're very obvious, and they're always in front of us.
So when you say it's a sign, you mean they're sending that?
They're sending those signs to
Nice.
us. And normally it's a time when we're going through things and we just kind of needed something. And there it was. I remember one time I was reading for someone and asked her about woodpeckers. I said, you see a woodpecker or anything? She couldn't validate. No, nothing about a woodpecker. A week later, she messaged me on Facebook, and she had a picture of a woodpecker at her office and was banging on her window in her office and wouldn't shut up banging. And she took a picture of it and said, Joseph, the woodpecker showed up. So that was the after effect of that.
That's adorable.
So, but that's the beauty of this, that spirit is always with us. We always can speak to them. They're here to assist. And just know that they're not far away, that there always will be with us. And when we pass away ourselves, we will see them again. Especially spouses too. If spouses have been together for many years, suppose if they met young in life, and they passed away at old age, they're going to see each other when they first met, when they were dating. This is how they're going to look like in spirit, and they're going to show each other. So, and that's the beauty. What heaven is, we create our own heaven. It's like using our imagination. And as a soul, we can create whatever, old, young, whatever we want to look like. And that's how we create our own heaven.
Yeah, I remember when, after my dad died, my mom, who was really pretty much blind, I mean, she could see a little bit, and she said, I don't feel alone because Daddy sits on the edge of the bed in his underwear. The old days, men always wear those shirts, and he's reading the newspaper, just like always, with his leg crossed.
Yeah.
And she knew that she saw him, and I believed her.
And that's the way he presented himself, because it's familiar to her that way. And that's how spirit does all the time.
Another time we, Jim and Michael and Lisa Costa and I were presenting at the Onset Spiritualist Church. I had no idea what a spiritualist church was. It was a church of mediums. And we stayed at their guest house, and the pastor came in and looked at me and said, oh, there's a young couple here that wants to say hi. And she described them, and I'm telling you, it was my parents when they were younger.
That's
She
it.
said they want you to know how spry they are, that they're moving around, that there's no pain. It was lovely.
Uh-huh.
There's great comfort from the work you do.
And something about the Poconos with your parents too. So,
Yeah.
and that's what that, when you mention your parents, I'm seeing the Poconos and I'm seeing honeymooning. I'm seeing romance between the two of them. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they were romantic. Hmm. Okay. So this whole idea of soul plans fascinates me.
Okay.
I really want to know more. I mean, in Robert Schwartz's book, he talked about it, and it really healed me of my sense of, why is this happening? Why are we going through this? He had a story of a young man who died of addiction, and a medium told his father that they had decided this. They had been best friends in spirit, and they had decided on this lifetime that they were going to do it this way, where the young man was going to be an incurable addict, is the word that was used. And his father, this guy's best friend, was going to play the father and to completely reject him. And they were having fights before they came into the life, because the guy who was going to be the father didn't want to do it. He did not want to reject his dearest friend. I mean, does this sound real, or am I making it up? Have you heard things like
yeah, and in my book, Is There More to Life Than What We Know? I kind of write a little bit about it. And before we're born, we pick our parents. Okay. It's like we see our lives, we see how our lives are going to unfold. For instance, we'll use addictions for an example. Okay. Suppose that there's two people, a mother and son. The mother has to learn responsibility, how to handle the death of a son who had addictions, to give her strength. Because in heaven, we don't feel this. We don't feel pain. It's no prejudice, no hate. It's like watching a movie here on this earth. So in order to experience it, we have to come into a physical body to feel this pain. So this mother, for some reason, maybe wants to feel how it is to lose a son to addictions. And the son plays that role, that uncurable overdose and stuff, to teach that lesson to the mother as well.
Why? Here's a question for the agent. Why would we want to do that? Why would anybody want to go through what we're going through?
Because we never experienced before. And we don't know how it is to experience it until we try. We can say, oh, the pain, crying, I don't know what that is. I want to try it. And then you try it here. And then you realize it gets embedded into us, and then we know it. It's like going into a hard drive or computer. We already know how that feeling is, and no, I'm not going to do that again. Sometimes there's role reversals too, where, for instance, if anyone who lost a child to overdose or suicide, maybe that child was the parent in another life, a past life, and you as a mother was their child, and you committed suicide or overdose. So you reverse roles so you can see how you hurt the parents when you did it. And that's how lessons are learned that way too.
Wow. So I've heard it said, God gives us these things as lessons. And then I've heard what you said. We pick our parents. This is something that we as souls do. How do you, is this just like a belief thing? Is it just a different way of saying the same thing? What's your take on it?
It's just another way of saying the same thing. We're just a fraction of who we are. When I teach, this is our higher self, our soul. It knows everything. Okay. Beverly's living a life here now. Okay. You may have another life in India, in Japan. You're still the same person, but in the same soul life, but you're learning different lessons at one time. You want to expand to different universes and galaxy, there's your soul going to a different galaxy.
So this is simultaneous?
Exactly. It's all simultaneously, and it's all feeding to the main soul. And all this, and you're learning, always learning when it feeds all the way up. And then when you reincarnate, you can just do a whole different story again, but you're always learning and all that. You know, the earth is what, 4.5 billion years old. You can't just think we only had this one life here and that's it. You know, we had multiple lifetimes. And a friend of mine, Dr. Brian Weiss, who wrote Many Lives, Many Masters, you know, he did the experimentations back in the 80s. And he talked about, you know, where he hypnotized and they going back into past lives and stuff. And, you know, I teach a workshop calling Past Life Regression, Future Life Regression, where I bring everybody under hypnosis too in this group and to experience their past lives.
That's
So
beautiful. So I've heard about past life, and I know Dr. Weiss has talked about future life progression, but what on earth is that?
future life progression is a trip to the future. This is more of where do you see yourself? Like when I do this workshop, I always envision us in an elevator. When we go to the past, we're going back, we're going down the elevator, the clock's going backwards. We stop, first stop, wherever you want to stop. You step out of the elevator, look at yourself in the mirror, what clothes you're wearing, what are the people around you, surroundings and all that. We'll go further back in time. When we go back to the future, we stop at the present time and go to the future, how far you want to go, 5 years, 10 years. Look inside, when you get off the elevator, look in the mirror at yourself. How is your health? Where are you living? What is your financial situation? And it's all using your imagination on what you feel. And that's what future life progression is. It's just to get a glimpse at the future and where you're seeing.
So
And
it isn't necessarily, it's imagination?
it's using your imagination, but it's also using manifestation. Because imagine, okay, 5 years from now, I see myself making a nice living and I have a big house somewhere, okay? And if I see myself that and I trust it, I'm going to put that out into the universe.
You're
5
pulling
years,
yourself towards it.
5 years, I'm going to have that nice house and all that allows pets, so to say.
Of course. Very important.
Yes. But that's using our imagination is the greatest tool that God has given us. And using our imagination, we can manifest and we can create. We are creators of our own destiny. But when we put fear and doubt into anything, that's what brings us behind. Fear is the worst thing that limits us. If we can put fear and doubt behind and just focus on the positive and see ourselves for a better future, we could be in that better future.
Beautiful.
Sounds easy, but it's very hard.
Yeah, well, it's our school, right? It's what we're here to learn how to do.
Well,
it is hard.
I always teach the earth is the karmic schoolhouse of growth.
Talk about that. What does that mean?
It means it's the hardest place. If we look at different universes, the earth itself, if we choose to come here, this is the hardest place, the hardest universe to learn lessons. This is where we have wars. This is where we have fear, prejudice, and everything. But here's where you'll have your most growth, meaning that in order for you to grow more spiritual or more enlightened, you have to go through the muck. And once you get through the muck, then you get it, brush it off, there's more light. So you have to go through dark to get to the light, and the earth is the hardest place to learn. But once you can master it, Jennifer, my fiance, is always teasing me, saying that I'm not coming here back with you anymore. Says, I know you have to be here. You know how to live this earth plane, all that. But me, I'm tired. I want to go place. I want to go somewhere on the beach. But I chose to do what I'm doing. I help a lot of people, and this is my gift, I should say. But I feel it's my journey, and this is what my journey of life is.
Beautiful. So, where do you get your information?
It's channeled. We all have channel sources that we can connect in. You can call it the universal life force if you want on there. And it's a voice, it's a feeling, it's a knowingness. And I tap into this knowingness, and this is how I get all the information that I need.
And if you were sitting there and another spiritual medium was sitting there, would you both be getting the same information about the same person? Or, you know what I'm saying?
No, I have worked with other mediums before, and sometimes another medium may get something different than I would get something. The there's mediums that are very gifted in getting names after name after name. And then the way I'm gifted in, I feel the emotions of the person. So I know their personalities will come through.
Of the person on the other side.
On the other side, correctly. And so, and that's where my gifts lie. So each medium's different. It's like a musician, you know, if you have two guitar players, you know, they're not going to be exactly identical. They're going to be different. So they may be the best at it. They may be good, but they'll be different.
Right. So how is a psychic different than a prophet?
A psychic and a prophet is pretty much the same. Prophet is more, it came out before the word psychic. It's more in like the Torah and the Bible, where they call prophesize and prophet. They didn't really use the word psychic.
So these were people who had the gift
to see, to prophesize
things.
Exactly, to see the future and to prophesy.
Because in religions, psychics are not appreciated. Why is that? Because
what happens is,
and I shouldn't say all religions, but in more orthodox or fundamental,
even the Christians believe, and you know, you have good doctors, you have bad doctors. Let me just say that too. Ethical doctors and non-ethical doctors. And it goes with the psychics too. I'm just going to use as an example. I did a show last night and someone messaged one of my a follower on there that I see a dark cloud over your head and this evilness is going to kill you and your family, and to reach out to me to remove this evilness. And these are the ones that give us a bad name.
The charlatans.
The charlatans. So all of a sudden, all psychics are charlatan. So I try to not to use the word psychic as much, because all of a sudden I'm a charlatan. So I use medium, I use healing medium, I use the word intuitive as well. And those are the words I try to identify myself as. So
could you have you ever worked with a family where there was addiction and you were able to help them with healing? Can you give us an example? Perhaps they lost their loved one or their loved one was ill. I guess what I'm asking in terms of healing, are you able to help the family? Do you ever help the person?
Yes, there's two ways too. I'm known as a divine healer as well. And I do group healing groups. And I remember it was a gentleman, though, it was an older gentleman who had addictions, and he came to my healing for his addictions. And I remember him writing a beautiful testimonial afterwards, said it took him 5 weeks afterwards, but he's completely clean. And this was like 10 years ago. And when we saw him in Sarasota, he was still clean, and he's 10 years sober. And he said he tried everything to get better and everything. And going to this healing group and the divine healing with the masters coming in, he tended to get healed. Now, for the families for the other side, to help them with those who had commit overdose or stuff like that, is just pretty much when I do my sessions, and I don't call them readings, I call them sessions, because that's what you are. You're in session to learn more about it. I kind of explain how the spirit, what they were going through and how they were having a hard time on this earth. And the addictions was the way of them to cope. It's a coping mechanism. And sometimes they just kind of, and a lot of times they could be very suicidal in tendency too, because they don't want to be here. But then when they pass over, they're more themselves, they're their higher selves, their learning self. So I tap into who they were when they were on this earth, so the person can identify as my son or daughter, and then I tap into their higher self of who their being is. A lot of them are helpers there on the other side, where they help lost souls. You may have addictions or suicides that goes through where they're lost, where they don't know where to go, they have no family, where these souls that have been through it will help guide them, give them love, and help them understand. So your child may do this afterwards to help others. And I find that's a lot happening too, to shed the light.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. I smiled because when I was given my purpose, it was to help lost souls find their way.
There you go.
So, I think there's a whole bunch of us with that purpose.
I call us earth angels or light workers, and we're all over the place.
There are a lot of them in the BALM. A
Um,
lot of loving beings in this program. The families, the coaches, it's the facilitators. It's an honor to be in this community. So, I happen to be Jewish, and I remember learning that in the mystical tradition, that people are really manifestations of God getting to know himself. What would you say to that?
when you say manifestation of God knowing himself,
God getting to, there's an idea in the Kabbalah that the main soul shattered and all the shards.
okay, yeah, I got you. I wrote the book I wrote, Speaking of Heaven. I explain about how God created the soul. Adam and Eve, the atom is the atom, not the name Adam, but the atom shattered, masculine, feminine energy. First that the atom split in two, masculine, feminine, then it shatters into other energies, and then it comes into the physical form on there. When we're godlike, that's when we're in our higher self, and this is when we're godlike. But when we shatter into those pieces and we become earth beings, so to say, now we're learning. This is when we're like sons and daughters of God, because we're in that learning aspect of things.
So good to all be together and in this lovely conversation. And Joseph, you added so much to our lives tonight. Thank you for coming.
I enjoyed tonight, and I thank you everyone for having me here. I say thank you all. My Southern thing comes out, but thanks everybody for having me tonight. And I love answering questions all about that. For those of you who are in South Florida, I do a lot of events, workshops too. So when you go to my website under events calendars, you can attend some of my events and workshops, and throughout Florida too. I'll be in like Fort Walton, Florida, Sarasota, St. Augustine, Miami.
But do you do anything on Zoom? Like you were talking about future lives, past lives. Do you do any regression stuff on Zoom?
No,
you like to do it
Jennifer's pushing me to do all that now.
Yeah.
So she says,
come to our world. Join our Zoom world.
Says, get out of my generation and get back into there. She wants me to start doing workshops and stuff on Zoom. So in the future, near future, yes, I will start to put some stuff together where we can do more internet stuff. But right now, it's me on the road. So, yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting back to Florida and coming to some of your events now that I know you do them.
Now that you know, when you come back, you'll come to my stuff. So, all right.
Well, again, thank you, Joseph, and thank you everyone for being here. Thank you all for coming, and remember, be a loving mirror. Good night, everybody.